All right, this is Listen to Tony with me, Anthony Olensky, and today's guest is Dylan, a computer scientist and machine learning expert. But I want to start with a question, Dylan. I saw on your LinkedIn, one of the things you want to do is alleviate poverty. How do we alleviate poverty?
Well, I don't know which LinkedIn you saw, but that wasn't mine. It's not that I don't want to alleviate poverty, but
It's one of your interests.
it's an interesting topic. I actually I come from Venezuela, which is a place that is riddled with poverty, to be honest. So, like, this is something that I've always drawn interest into. I'm actually not a computer scientist. I'm an economist, and then move into the data world. And during my time studying economics, I was very into what is called economic development, like this area in economics that is trying to focus on how do you improve the living conditions of people around the world. And that was a very interesting topic for me because it was very close to home in terms of like what, what you see in Venezuela. But it's not really like something that I'm very focused on these days. So
Yeah, and I'm curious. You know when they say like this, people in this country live on like $1.20 per day. What does that mean?
it,
Is it? I mean, is it really that bad? Like when you say Venezuela, like you've seen poverty in Venezuela, and I don't know what the statistics are. Um,
I
but
think it is similar to that. Like it kind of like I will say right now, like I guess on the percentage could be like 80% of the poverty of the of the population is in poverty, or like what is considered poverty. I don't know, maybe like a dollar, $2 a day could be. The thing is that there's also a big percentage of the population that receive either money from the outside, like people living in the outside, sending money back home,
remittances,
so
yeah.
that kind of helps alleviate part of that. And there's also many of the people who live in poverty receive some sort of like packages from the government, which is like either food or not very. It's not like it's very efficient and very regular. Like it's kind of like every month or every 2 weeks you receive like a small bag.
Care package.
Yeah, with kind of like helps you like survive during this process. But generally, I would say the people who live in poverty either like are having a very hard time or like use whatever the government gives them to survive through this process.
How is it? I guess growing up in a country like this, um, do you grow up with the idea of I'm gonna leave as soon as possible, or there are some people, or maybe yourself, you thought you can change it and stay?
It's fun. It's actually like it's interesting. Like the poverty is not fun at all.
Yeah.
that one, I mean,
Yeah.
want to get that from there, but it's an interesting place to grow in. I actually grew in a very rural town in Latin America, like in Venezuela. It was very easy to see the contrast. Like in my like, I live like I will say I don't know upper middle class. I was in this town, and I live like in the neighborhood was you could see the combination of people middle class and also a very like extreme poverty. So I would live in a house that a few blocks away or I don't know a couple houses away there were people who they use like this I don't know it's called like metal I don't know it's like a how do you call that like they don't really have walls in a
You mean just like a piece of the thing that you put on a roof, like the aluminium or
yeah this thing I don't know how is it called in
yeah,
English but they would make their houses were made of that like
like
they
little shacks?
yeah like I had like those shacks like right next to my house and I was living like in a two floor house and like a nice house kind of like pretty decent for whatever standard but then like I was living right next to people who were almost starving each
Shit.
day so it was a bit crazy the contrast is a bit weird you get used to it and like I would play football with like people from the neighborhood so we were like friends there and everybody knows each other
So you
so it
weren't
was
they
interesting.
didn't see you as you were just neighbors. It you just had different houses, but it wasn't like your house was seen as this almost as like a palace for them, and there was some tension between people living around it and you.
Eh, there like we weren't seen like as a palace at all because like if you see like I was like kind of middle class there were other guys who had
Okay,
like
yeah.
a bunch more money, but we were there were no tensions, but they were not dumb, so they realized that we had like much more money than that they had, so it was generated like some weird dynamics sometimes. It was kind of like everything like people are great there. I mean like our neighbors are great, and we will help each other out in whatever moments we could. Like for instance, if there were issues with water, we had like a something built on our house so that is like was able to like keep water for longer. So we will help like some neighbors to get water and
Mm.
stuff if there were some water issues and this type of thing. So like we will help each other, but there were some also like maybe not
I
necessarily
guess like
not so good.
adversity unites when like everyone is in the same like very tough situation. Doesn't matter if you're slightly better off than someone else on like you're still in the shit because like there you have the government that's oppressive, et cetera, et cetera. Um, how did you I guess get out of that, or did you? Because going back to the question, like, did you feel like, okay, it's actually nice. Like, I have my friends. I can stay here. I can maybe change something or become part of the system. Even do people consider like joining the? I don't know how it functions over there. If there's like this one party system where you can sign up and you can climb up the ladder and become a very wealthy and well off public official, or not really.
Nowadays, I would say it's that essentially. Like the thing is that it's not only joining the party. You gotta know the right people. It's like it takes sometimes. It's a lot. Venezuela is a lot, or essentially it's about influences. Who you know in the government in particular, and how that can you can use that person to help you build whatever you want to build. Like I don't think there are many companies in Venezuela that can survive or that can grow big without having any sort of like governmental support. Even
Mm.
like if it's direct or indirect, like there's some some support there. So like for me it was kind of like I never actually like I left Venezuela in 2015, and I at that time I didn't want it to leave, but I thought okay maybe
How
I
old were
can.
you?
I was 24, I think,
Okay, well,
25.
so you stay there like for quite like some time. We were in like I'm 17 or 18. I can leave now. Boom, I'm out.
Yeah, I wanted to leave for university, but then kind of got used to it, and it kind of it's a nice place to live. Like people are great, and it's I don't know,
The weather, yeah.
it's your home
So you can
also.
live there normally. Like you can go to university. It's not like it's completely like North Korea. You know what I mean?
Well, I will say university nowadays is pretty fucked up because it's kind of like there's no resources for university these days. Actually, my father-in-law and my mother-in-law they are university professors, and I think they get paid like 200 euros per month, something like that. So and she like my mother-in-law, she has like a PhD and I don't know how many years of research experience, and it's crazy. Like
Mm,
like, nobody
yeah.
with a PhD wants
That's
to stay there.
dedication, man. Like they want to stay because they probably could, get a nice gig at some university wherever, like in the U.S. or Canada.
Yeah, but they kind of like necessarily want to leave, and it's kind of like you've lived your whole life in a place, you get used to the people, you have your connections there, your friends there, and it's kind of like they had like, especially like my mother-in-law, she has like a very hard time on trying to figure out do I actually want to live or not, and she at this point she's kind of like she has like a few years until retirement, which retirement for a university there means like you don't get almost any money, but it's kind of like you're officially retired.
Mm.
She wants to get retired, and then maybe she will leave.
Do you think well you can just normally function over there? Like you can be a university professor, you can have a social life. Even though there might be some water shortages or energy shortages, overall it's you. I mean, how was college life for you?
Yeah, I mean,
21, like I mean, was it like whatever you see in the movies, or like when later you started talking to people who went to school, I don't know, somewhere else, similar experiences or completely different?
pretty similar. I will say like people you see that in Venezuela, and also like if you go to any country which has similar issues, people get used to stuff, and it's kind of it becomes a regular part of your life. Like at some point during the university, remember we had like electricity or blackouts during like every day, maybe 3 4 hours. That was like the good times actually, the times where we didn't have like so many blackouts and we were like 3 4 hours without electricity throughout the day. So you get used to it. Like if you live in an apartment building, you can like get used to using the stairs all the time. If you have class usually get canceled if there's no electricity. So there were classes that would either try to work around, like make the classes earlier or make the classes later in the hours that were scheduled for a blackout. Or I don't know. I think like people, it's very like in the beginning it's hard, but oftentimes like if you keep like focusing on like I don't have electricity, I don't have water, like people cannot live that way. Like you
Yeah,
get like
yeah. You just gotta move on. And
yeah.
what was the? I guess. Do you have some memory of something that was like completely, like looking back now, was out of the ordinary? Like it wasn't. It shouldn't have happened, or it was like a part of your childhood that you just took for. This is how it is. It's normal, but probably looking back wasn't.
Yeah, so there's a bunch. I will say one that it's interesting because it's like crazy, pretty crazy compared to what you see in developed countries or even like also countries similar to Venezuela. We had this thing that was called Cadivi in Venezuela, which essentially is like a institution from the government that manages the dollars or the exchange rate.
Mm.
So you couldn't buy dollars openly in the market. You had to go through this institution to get dollars, right?
Yeah.
And to get those dollars, you will be assigned, like for instance, each person who had like a credit card in Venezuela, they will give to that person $2,000 per year to use in whatever they wanted, like outside of the country, and they will be able to pay those dollars in the official exchange rate. So the official exchange rate was something like, I don't know, maybe 2 or 4 bolivares per dollar, something like that. Let's say those figures because now the money is like
Yeah.
millions or whatever, so it doesn't make any sense. But let's say it was 2 or 4, and then you got the black market rate, which was around $16 or something, like 16 bolivares per dollar. So it was like a big gap there.
Yeah.
And what ended up happening was that it was a crazy thing. Like people would go on vacations. Like imagine, like you go out of Venezuela, you go on a vacation to like the USA, to Europe, to wherever. They will spend these dollars, and funnily enough, they will come back to Venezuela, pay their vacations, and make money. So essentially, you will go on vacations and make money. So imagine like the
Okay, because you use the spread from the government
yeah,
arbitrage, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And this generated this thing where like if you had a credit card, you could do this, right? So this generated a huge incentive of like everyone started to do this. Like it was called I don't remember now the name in Spanish, but it was something like people will look for anyone like I know this girl or this
Yeah,
guy who
yeah.
just turned 18 and he had like no credit history or whatever, but I'm going to find some way to get a credit card for him. So you will see people that their job, the only thing they did was essentially go find people that didn't have the means to have a credit card for sure, but they will pay, I don't know, someone in the bank or whatever. They will get a credit card for this person. They will take this person they will also help this person get a passport because these people usually didn't have a passport either.
Yeah.
They will get the passport, the credit card. They will take them on a on a flight. Like they will do like 20 people thing, 30 people thing. So they will like package these tours. They will take them to Europe, to Latin America, to USA. They will stay there like for a week or whatever, and they will come back. They will pay for the vacations of these guys. They will give them some money, but then keep the
But how, like, doesn't the government know that stuff like this is happening?
yeah, they know. But the thing is that if you see the whole pie of the like they know that it's happening. The thing is that they make money out of it. Like their friends, the people who are connected to the government will make money out of it. And like
Mm.
this travel thing is a small part of a bigger pie, which was they have like control over the exchange rate that was used for imports, right? And a lot of those imports became like were assigned to friends of the government, people who were like, I have this friend in Cadivi, whatever, and I got like $2 million, $3 million to import something. So what they will usually do is like, let's say I put like I'm going to import cameras,
Yeah.
and instead of cameras, what I ended up importing was like portraits, like these like things to put photographs in, like this thing. I don't know
Yeah.
what's the name.
Frames.
Yeah, frames. And so like you import this thing, then like nobody really cares because there wasn't any control about it. You end up like spending a lot less that you were supposed to spend. You take that money that you made and you will sell that in the black market and make like millions. Like that was crazy. Yeah, yeah.
And no questions asked. Like where are the fucking cameras, man?
Yeah, I mean, like, there were questions, I suppose, but nobody wanted to ask them, to be honest. So it was kind of like,
That's wild, and it's it's that a country can like there are millions of people living there. It's a nation state, yet you can just it's almost as if like it doesn't exist because the rules can be broken very easily. Like it's kind of paradise for people who want to like just live their own way. Like, didn't you consider when you were studying economics, like I want to get some action, and like I want to get on this? Like you probably could have, right? You could be a millionaire, not trying to like build now.
I don't know, actually.
Start up in Berlin.
Yeah, could have a nice life. But no, what I mean, like, when we were studying economics, it was always fun in the sense that it was so weird compared to what you saw like in textbooks, because in textbooks, like, things were like, in theory, things.
Yeah, what do they teach you? They teach you like Marxist theory or
I had some Marxist classes, but those suck. Like, those were like,
yeah.
and I mean, like, I think Marxism sucked just for the sake of it, but also the classes were terrible, so that didn't help.
Yeah.
But like they teach you like economics, like what they will teach you like economics in the USA, but that's like
Micro, macro.
macro, like it's the typical stuff, but it's like doesn't apply at all to what you see in Venezuela. It's like the complete opposite of whatever you're seeing. Like there were so many crazy moments. Let's say another one that is called. There was this thing called bachaqueros, which essentially where people. There were some times where there were products shortages, so there were like a bunch of things you couldn't buy, but the government kind of like gave some dollars at a lower rate to specific stores or to specific like imports, and those were like, I don't know, you could find like very cheap products, very specific products, very cheap, right? So that led to huge queues of people trying to buy those products. So queues like that could last for days sometimes, or like even longer. Like if you nowadays you can still be in a queue for to get oil to your car for a week, maybe depending on the area of where you live in Venezuela. So it's crazy. But in these queues, a new economic environment appeared, and there were this thing called bachaqueros, which essentially were people who will get in the queue, stay in the queue for you. They will sell their position in the queue. So a huge like like weird economic thing will get there, or they will go and buy the products and then sell the products in the black market. So it was weird. Like it was like it's completely fucked up. Like to have these things in a country where we were getting so much money because of the oil imports, because Venezuela exports, because Venezuela was one of the most important producers of oil.
You still have to wait in line for a week to get it. How did you go about, like, usually when you're at university, you do internships, you try to kind of build up also that experience part. Did you do any internships in Venezuela, or you wait until you're done with university and then you left and then you started doing whatever?
I actually did an internship at the Central Bank of Venezuela, so it was interesting to see things from the inside, like how I work. It was a nice place. The people were great. The thing was pretty much like the central bank is supposed to be like an independent entity, because if the central bank or the central government has power over the central bank, that's why usually in economic theory leads to inflation, because like you can like have a fiscal deficit and pay that, or use the central bank to print money to somehow pay for that deficit. That's like not good. So when I was in the central bank, essentially like the central bank wasn't independent at all. So whatever we were doing I was actually doing some sort of study to try to, for whatever reason, explain that inflation wasn't related to printing money. So they were there were some studies from I think Thomas Sargent. And
okay, we proved it, man. Like it's like inflation doesn't exist, or even if it does, we can print more money. Yeah, I love it, man. And what happened to the study? Was it like approved or published?
But I mean, like, it kind of like, no, it was kind of like some internal research stuff. It wasn't, it was a very hard sell, you know, it's kind of like,
It's critical thinking though. Like I like the part of they actually question, maybe everyone else is wrong. Like
yeah, yeah, would have been nice, like, say, hey, yeah, it's not the printing machine that we have here. It's like, I don't know. Well, they actually do. They say, hey, it's the USA or it's whatever. So
do you feel like is there an influence of other countries, Latin America, that helping Venezuela out, or like is Cuba like seen as like a friendly nation that also helps with, even when you're at the central bank, maybe you would exchange notes on like or like with Zimbabwe when they had this incredible inflation. Countries like this, do they all cooperate to make their um, reality that's kind of just a bit absurd normal?
yeah, kind of like we were friends like with the great guys, Cuba, North Korea. They were like
Yeah.
our friendly neighbors that we always like try to get some influence from. Before that, actually, all Latin America is very influenced. Like mostly, well, maybe like not all Latin America necessarily, but a lot of Latin America is influenced by the USA. To be honest, like if you go
Monroe
to any,
Doctrine. Yeah.
yeah, it's essentially like you go to Latin America and like the what people wear, a lot of what people listen to, and like the things. Actually, the country. Well, if you go in Latin America and ask like where do you want to go, most people say I want to go to the USA. So there's like a bit of a weird dynamic there where you have like a lot of influence from the USA, but also then after this government started, like a lot of influence from Cuba and like Russia, actually China. Like it kind of got a bit weird, to be honest. There.
Mm. So when you left, why did you leave and where did you go?
So I left for Spain. I wanted to do a master's degree there. My sister was already living in Spain, so seemed like a good deal. I didn't wanted to stay. Actually, I want like my idea was I do a master's degree and come back to Venezuela and continue working there.
At the central bank.
No, I was working. There was like some small international. At that time, I was still in economics. So at that time, there was like this small international organization that, for whatever reason, decided to have their central location there, the headquarters there. So it's called Sistema Económico para Latinoamérica, CEPAL, something like that. It's like
Okay, yeah.
it's a weird name. So yeah, I was working there.
It's like a think tank.
It's kind of like no, it's like a Latin American Caribbean organization essentially.
Okay.
It's like you do economic research
Yeah.
there. So it was kind of interesting. The work wasn't bad, and I think I could have stayed there for longer if I wanted to, but I decided like, hey, maybe I'll do a master's degree and then come back. But then I arrived to Spain and kind of like you get
Were you like,
used.
wow,
Yeah,
freedom?
yeah. I mean, like, wow, like this is like a very completely style of life. Like when you are there, you can like you live in this like some sort of bubble or like you can like things that look normal to you and that will like seem crazy out here.
Yeah.
Like you don't see those, right? Because like you are there, your life is that.
But you don't have TV. You guys watch Netflix over there and stuff, or not
Yeah, but
really?
it's kind of like I don't know.
Yeah,
For
okay,
whatever reason,
you
the
got to see with
brain
your
doesn't.
own eyes. Yeah.
Yeah, the brain doesn't register that that's how people live and like that's the usual thing. Like for example, like getting to my house there in Caracas. I was living in Caracas. Like getting to the building was like I had a car there, right? So I will go with my car. You have to be careful. Like this is like 7 p.m. This is not crazy hours. Like 7 p.m. I will be careful, like of seeing like if anybody, I don't know, a motorcycle, someone was following me. There were like two gates, like very thick iron gates.
Mm.
So I had like a remote. I would open the first gate, get in, will make sure that nobody followed me or got in the first gate. Then I will wait for this gate to close. I will open the second gate and get in the parking lot.
That's dangerous, man. Like the what if like the gate behind you closes, and in front of you still isn't open, and then you are surrounded by like two guys with guns.
Probably you just like leave your car or whatever. Like, no,
Yeah.
I mean, but your idea is like I like to avoid. I don't know, maybe that they don't get into the building, into your house or something
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that. So you would like go into this whole process, these two gates first. Then I will get into the parking lot. In the parking lot, we also had like a manual gate, so I will go down from the car, like in the specific, like in the parking
Yeah.
specific parking lot, like that I was going to put the car. I will go down of the car. We had two locks. I will open the two locks, open the gate, put the car in, close the gate, close the locks, go in, and we had like three doors, like two security doors, and then one security, like two security doors for the building, and then one security door in the apartment.
They can take
Before
your
you get in.
fingerprints.
No,
Then
no,
there's like
no.
two guys in there checking your ID.
No
Is
fingerprints.
this your house?
Essentially, because there's no electricity most of the time, so you cannot really have something that is electrical, because otherwise you're going to get out of. You're gonna
Yeah,
go back to your house. So like that thing seemed normal to me. It was kind of like okay-ish.
because it's dangerous, but people might rob you, and that's why all the precautions. Okay.
Yeah. So it's kind of like, I mean like I'm middle class there. Like this is like typical things that middle class will do, at least when I left, and then I kind of like came here and saw like, then this is such a different way of living that I thought, I don't know if I want to go back, to be honest. So I started thinking like maybe I can do something else here, and the situation was getting worse there actually. So by the time I finished the degree, it was kind of like even worse than when I left. So I kind of like, this is not making sense, you know.
Mm. And what did you start doing in Spain? Like, well, you studied masters in economics, right?
I did a master's degree in quantitative finance, so I wanted to go into finance somehow. Then I started like when I finished the degree, I thought like, hey, maybe I can do some trading and stuff, and that sounded like fun. I wanted to do like, I'm always more keen on the programming side of things or mathematical side of things. So I thought like quantitative trading or algorithmic trading, that sounds like fun.
How was that transition though? Like from being, because economics is still considered a social science, right? And then going into hard science like math and becoming a quant. Was it the level of also the education offered in Spain was on a much higher level and helped you transition very quickly? Or what was the I don't know, you just get into Madrid, and what's the process of like transitioning from where you started to where you wanted to be?
So I would say like I did 2 years of electrical engineering before I actually did economics. So it kind of like helped me set a bit of the basis there. That helped. But essentially, like I was struggling through the whole master's degree, and like I think that actually led me like my neck. You will see like my neck and my shoulders will get like stiff completely. Like there were some days where I couldn't like even see to the side because I was like too stressed out, too many hours like trying to, I had to like compensate for the
Yeah.
whole lack of, because
Did you gain
economics.
weight?
Huh?
Did you gain weight?
A bit, but not that much. I'm kind of
Okay.
like very stable in terms of weight for whatever reason. But it was like very stressful. Like, those were like, there were days where like I couldn't really like I thought that I thought like I broke something. Like there's something wrong. Like I went a few times to the doctors and whatever. And it's just like the way that I was always like this, like with my shoulders up and like so many hours trying to understand like trying to solve things, understand like how some models work. That took me a while. Like that was I would say literally painful experience through the masters.
Yeah, and when you mentioned the absurdity of what you went through in Venezuela, with all the different precautions you have to take and what happens day to day, when you got to Spain and realized that there is so much room for just self-expression and trying new things, and the system works, did you feel or have a thought pass through your head like, oh, I could take advantage of XYZ? Because you come in from like an outsider perspective, it's like, oh, these people are clueless about life. Like,
Yeah, there's always like this. If you go on a group of Venezuelans who live in Spain or whatever they are living, you will see one of the first things everybody says is like, they complain so much, like wherever you're living, like you say Spanish or Germans, even if you're here, like they complain so much because it's like when you're there, people kind of like complain, but they don't like, because it's such a shitty place. It's kind of like, you don't complain a lot because like things don't improve. In Spain, people complain and things improve generally, so it's a bit different. So what I noticed right away was like, I was always thinking like, man, this is such a nice country. You have like such nice public transportation, infrastructure. And I always saw like people, the metro, whatever is delayed. And I was like, but you have the metro, it works. You can go to work.
Yeah.
So it was always like that. I think you see more people with more hunger, like hunger, but not literal. Well, also literal hunger in Venezuela, but you see people like like you're more
Drive.
hungry to more drive
Yeah.
to do things. That one's for sure.
And so you being young and having that drive and ambition, how did you channel it? You've went through the struggle of getting your master's. Did you start in finance, like your first job in Europe, or?
Yeah, I started as a quant in Allianz, like the insurance company. They had like an investment department, and I started there. I quickly realized that I didn't like that. To be honest, like through the master's degree, I realized I didn't like finance generally that much. Like it seemed like a good area in terms of like my skills.
Mm.
It was pretty boring except for the trading part. To be honest, like algorithmic trading, quant trading, that was fun. But I tried to get in one of like the prop trading firms that are here, like Optiver. There's like I don't remember the name of Flow Traders. I think it's another one, but it's like extremely competitive places. You technically have to be very good, but also, for example, I remember like for I think the Flow Trader ones interview, they make this thing. Do you not only have to be good on the technical side, you also had like to make these weird mathematical operations very quickly. So, for example, one of the first tests was they take like 100 questions, and the questions are like 4-digit sums or 4-digit multiplications. It seems like easy, right? But you have to do that, I don't know, in 3 minutes, and without using any external device or any support. Even like you cannot use your hands.
We have calculators and stuff. Like, why?
Yeah, it's weird. Like I don't know why, but it's essentially some filter that they use
Maybe
to
taking a step back, like, what does it mean to be a quant?
a quant. It depends a lot on the industry. It's usually mean that you're using some sort of models to either price a financial asset or to calculate risk from financial assets, or even like the models to predict, okay, what's the best moment where I can
So, for
do some
example, what would
operation.
be your data? What would you price or what would you calculate?
So we had like in Allianz, we had like a bunch of bonds, government bonds. So we will price what's the fair price of that bond. We
It's
had
not
like
what the government says. Like, if the government says it should be $100, like you would still look. How would you even compare? Or, yeah, what's the process of trying to find the true price?
so essentially like I haven't been in that area for a long time, but it's usually related to the interest rates, your forecast of what the interest rates are going to be in the future. So you can like generate a curve of interest rates, see the cash flows that you get from that bond, and try to like come back to the present those prices, like discounted cash flow, you like discounted cash flows.
DCF, yeah.
Yeah, essentially, and you get a price there. Bonds are the easy stuff to price, but then you have like swaps, which are like more complex instruments. So you have like to do some additional maybe modeling, also options is the same thing.
And people do that for like a day job.
Yeah, they do that. The thing is
Wow.
that depending on where you are, like like in insurance company, they are not very risk hungry people. So essentially, you have very few instruments, and they don't change a lot. So you can like we got like a new instrument every once in a while, like a very different instrument, and you can like you price that.
Financial instrument.
Yeah,
Just to
financial
yeah.
instrument. Yeah, you buy an asset, like a new asset, or you sell an asset or whatever. And usually when you buy an asset, you can like set the model that you want to use that to price it or whatever. And it was kind of like very boring because the first time you got something new, you need to build the model, and that's cool. But after that, it's just maintenance or whatever you had. And my job was essentially like making sure nothing break on whatever we had already. And it was a mess. Like that place, it was nice. I think the people were cool, but it was very old school, so I didn't enjoy it. To be honest, I thought like I can grow my career further, like in other places.
Yeah, you came all the way to Europe, not to sit at Allianz and be a quant. So when did you leave, and what did you do next?
So I think I was there for a year and a half, maybe something like that. And I decided to leave. Like I joined at that time. BCG were growing their Gamma team. The Gamma team is like the analytics or data AI team within BCG, and they were growing the team in Madrid. So I joined. We were one of the few first hires. With like there was a manager and another guy who joined at the same time as me, and it was pretty cool because like the team was essentially growing from zero.
It's kind of
And
like a startup.
yeah, it was kind of it felt like it had some startup vibes. It was very chaotic, like originally because VC is also like it's an old company and they have like their way of doing things,
Yeah.
and we were like a different approach towards many problems. So we had like to figure out, okay, how do we fit in these projects, because like many of those projects are management consulting projects, not so technical, maybe a lot of like human relationships, how you do execute on these changes. And we were like coming from a very technical side of things. We have different ways of working, we have different profiles of people, so there were a lot of clashes, I would say, generally throughout the my time here.
And maybe first, so you achieved that level of proficiency in your computer, like data science skills that you got there. How are the first days, and like what were the differences between Allianz and BCG in terms of like the chaos, and how did you find yourself in that environment?
So I would say the pace, very quickly you realize that that it was different. I remember one of the first projects where I was in Allianz, people would leave like 4:35, like people will start leaving like the office. In BCG, that's usually not the case in most projects, and even like in my first project, actually, I remember this Friday when I was traveling. Like at that time, my wife was living in Valencia, which was like it's like a 2-hour train from Madrid.
Wait, your wife is Spanish or Venezuelan, or
She's Venezuelan.
so you met her before coming to Spain?
Yeah, I actually met her like 12 years ago. We've been together for 12 years on and off with some breaks in between.
Mm.
So yeah, a very long time. So yeah, so I was going to visit her, and I remember like, it was like 9 p.m. I took the last train, and I was working through the like, in this project because I needed to deliver something for that day. I got to Valencia, I hadn't finished. I called my manager and said, hey, like, can I send this tomorrow or whatever? Like, she told me, yeah, but you already said that you're going to send this today. So I ended up working until, I don't know, 1 a.m., 2 a.m. And that was not my first project. I was coming from an environment where like people were leaving at 4 p.m. or
Yeah,
whatever. It was like a
8 hours
mixture for me.
done. Like, okay.
Yeah. But there's like, it was interesting. I would say like very focused on like delivery and providing value to the client.
What does it mean to be a consultant?
Think it changes a lot. I was more focused on the data science part. I was a data scientist at BCG, but the projects vary a lot. Like I think it depends on what you're doing. Generally, what you want to do is like figure out a problem, or like the problem, a client has a problem. You figure out some way to provide value based on like solving that problem or making an improvement on what the current solution is, and you try to deliver on that. That's usually like what you try to do. It's very generic, the response, but I would say that's how I see it.
Did you have any client that you wanted to stay and work with? Like, how do you even do you decide on your own projects, or do you just put onto this? Okay, Dylan, take care of this. You have 2 weeks, solve it. And I guess a follow up question to that is, how are you incentivized to deliver the best possible work for a given client? I know that you're BCG and that you're paid for it, but it's not your company. You don't have any stake in it. Like, you could deliver something 90% and the client probably wouldn't notice, right? And okay, there is a question of integrity, but overall, like, curious, like, how do you even, in terms of like mindset as an employee, how does that play with you?
So the first one, like on how I pick the projects, is essentially like you are in a pool of like people, like you're on the beach or you're on the, I don't remember the bench, the other one, I don't know exactly, but if you're on the beach, you can like waiting for projects. You get suggested projects. You can like can say no sometimes, but I found like in most cases it will be like a strong suggestion that you join this project
Yeah.
for a reason. So I will like take them. Generally, very few places I will say like no. Maybe like in some projects where there's like I don't have skills to solve this, I would say like, I cannot do that and whatever. But generally, like, if I had the skills, I will join the project. Then on the delivery part, I will say it's like a mindset of the people in it, especially that helps. I don't think like there's no like you have a bonus and you have a high paying job usually, and that's good. But I think like it's a lot of like you're seeing your teammates busting their asses off, so it kind of like makes you also want to like do your best to
Do you get
deliver on the
paid though
project.
if you're just sitting on the beach or the bench, whatever that?
Yeah. If you're on the beach, you are also getting paid, so you can do courses and stuff like during those times.
Whoa, so just time for self-development.
Yeah, they try to minimize the time you are on the beach, actually, to
Yeah.
be honest. But there were times where they didn't have enough projects for whatever reason, and like you will be on the beach for a while.
And while it was like a week or two or like months.
It depended. Like there were people who were like for a long time. We like BCG had some acquisition at some point. Like they bought a Spanish company, so a lot of people joined like very quickly. And some of those guys, I think, were like on the beach for 2 months, 3 months, something like that, or even further.
Whoa. And going to the ownership part, like you're put on a project, and did you build some? I just, I guess like, did you get so into it that you felt like, hey, I want to stay, or was it every time, okay, next, 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 because this is I need to move faster because that's what BCG expects of me.
So I would say like there were some like when in the beginning projects might be a bit tough, but after some time it's kind of like they get better and you get used to it, and it's kind of like you feel good when you're. I don't know when you feel comfortable. There were some times where if you're too comfortable in a project, they might be want to like take you out of the project and put you in something else. Like it's kind of like some weird culture there around that. But generally, I would say like I like some of the projects that I work in there, and maybe I could have thought like maybe we can stay in the client. Actually, it's not so bad if you stay. Many people actually stay with the clients, and you see that because that's how these
Natural
places work.
transition,
Yeah,
yeah, and probably BCG gets some nice fee for it if they.
Not sure about the fee, but it's kind of like you are from BCG, so whenever there's new projects in your area, because many of those consultants end up like in executive roles, directors, whatever. So
Okay,
it's kind of like
okay. You land
you already know this is your family, so you kind of like when you need to consider new projects, these are the first guys you're going to call. So it's
true.
kind of like the same thing.
How long did you stay there?
Stay there for almost 2 years. Is was interesting experience. You kind of burn out quickly, especially like at some point you realize this is not my company, and
Yeah.
I'm like busting my ass off to work on this. So it's kind of like maybe not so fun
Yeah.
anymore.
How do they motivate you? Just like the learning opportunity by being put on different projects and probably a nice salary, and that's it, right?
You have some nice perks. Also, you travel a lot. If you want to travel, that's nice. They like I was in a project in Peru, and you will stay like in very fancy hotels. You got like $50 per meal to eat anything. So it's kind of like nice in that front. Like,
So like 150 per day, or
the hotel already included the breakfast, so you didn't got that one, but still, yeah, it's €100. It was at that time €100 per day, like per 50 per
yeah,
meal. Just so you couldn't
yeah.
like like accumulate it.
That's nice, dude. Like you could eat well, probably take care of yourself.
And you even get like an Amex. You get your own Amex, so you accumulate points, and
It's,
then you can use the points. That's good perks. Like I mean, it's a if you want to travel, especially like people coming out of university, it's like a great place to work in. It's
mm.
like work hard, party hard. They have like these amazing events. We went to a conference in Singapore. We stayed there in the Ritz. Like it was like a crazy. It was
What?
yeah. That was crazy. I was like amazing conference there. Like the Gamma team, they did like this conference there, and we were like 4 day, 5 days in there. Everything like all paid. These fancy hotel Ritz or I don't know whatever
It's
it
actually
is.
probably better than an MBA.
Yeah,
Like, right? Just, I mean, I never did an MBA, but like, from the sound of it, you're getting paid, you're working on different projects, you're challenged, but also like you said it's almost like they make it fun for you. So it's a good extension of school. Um, and so you left, and was there a did you want to go to another company, or the time when you started looking for your own, like what you could do when you're as like Dylan, now I have the experience. I'm not like maybe afraid for my financial well-being because I saved up some money. Now it's time to go big, or was that not the moment yet?
So no, that wasn't the moment yet. I thought at that time the Olympics was organizing their data team for the 2020 Olympics, and that was interesting for me. I thought like, hey, this is a pretty cool project. Like this is something completely new, at least for me. And I thought, hey, that sounds like a good opportunity. They reach out, we had some conversations, and then I joined the data team for the 2020 Olympics. And I decided, yeah, to stay there, but the thing, the pandemic happened, and for whatever reason, like they moved the Olympics, and it kind of like at that moment in time, I was already like, by the time they moved the Olympics, I was actually prepared to start something on my own, and that's when I went freelancing.
What kind of data do they analyze for the Olympics? Like, what does it mean to be a data scientist at the Olympics organizing committee?
Yeah, so it's more around the media part of it, because the Olympics in the end becomes like a big part of the data they generate is actually on their Olympic, like the websites, right? All these websites that people use, like the Olympics also films the Olympics themselves, so they have like the broadcasting rights and they sell that, and they also have sponsorships, right?
Hmm.
So essentially, what we were trying to do is like, how can we get more people interested in the Olympic movement, right? And that meant how can we reach more people using the information that we have available on these websites? How can we make people more engaged with the content that we are already producing? And that's like amazing content. Like they've won like a bunch of like awards for
For the
documentaries they've
videos.
built and stuff.
Mm. Okay, and you said you wanted to become a freelancer. What is it? What is the job of like? I mean, I know what if literally like you pick the different jobs that are being sent over to you, but it's kind of like being a consultant now.
Yeah, essentially, yeah, you kind of like you help people. What I see, how I see myself is like businesses have data. I know how to use data to generate value for the business, so can like help them in that process. There's like many ways of how you can do this. I've done it. Like I work at the European Commission for some time. That was boring, to be honest. That was like kind of like
Slow.
yeah, way too slow. Like that's like coming from the environments that I was coming in, because in the Olympics it was interesting because it was a very small team. Actually, there were like I don't know, 5 6 people, and by the time I left, there were 40 50 people. So we grew very fast during those times. It was very chaotic. It was weird because it was chaotic within a very old company, and that was I really enjoyed that experience. But when I joined the European Commission, it was essentially pretty chill work. You can do a couple of hours per day. I mean those guys are great. The team there is pretty nice. It's just that pace I thought I wasn't learning as much, to be honest. So I kind of stay there for 3 months and then say, hey, like there's something better I can do.
Yeah, you mentioned drive when you said like people are a bit more driven in Venezuela. What drives you?
I will say I want to do something like something that is clear for me is that I don't want to be the guy. I saw this very frequently in Allianz. There was like these old guys who had like made their career there 13 years,
Mm.
20 years, whatever. And you see these guys, and they were clearly frustrated with what they're doing. Like they didn't like what they're doing. They were like very keen on getting retire as soon as possible. Like they were very keen on like it's 5 p.m. I want to leave now because I'm tired of whatever I'm doing like these 8 hours or so. And
You just
for me
clock
it's
in, yeah.
for me it's very clear that I don't want to be those guys. I mean, like work is a very important part of what we do, what we all do in our lives, and I want to do something that I'm passionate about, something that I love, that I go there and I enjoy. I don't mean to say that every day you have to be like there's a party in the office and
Yeah,
you're like
yeah.
whatever, but I really want to do something where I feel like happy with, like in a year from now I feel like proud of myself that I'm working on this. So that drives me a lot. There's the opportunity or doing something that I'm passionate about. That's like what drives me, and that's what usually makes me take decisions. And like if I feel that in a place where I'm either not learning or not progressing enough, I usually try to go to a place where I think like, okay, this is going to make me grow.
What about commitment and building? Like just example in startups, right? You have the concept of vesting, right? You're given equity and they make you, or they don't make you, but like you have to spend 4 years at that startup to vest completely your stock, meaning like if you stay for 13 months, you get 13 out of 48 of your, equity. So I guess compounding on, I get the idea of moving to different projects because you want to try new things. But did you ever feel like, okay, I need to settle on something? And is that time now?
Yeah, I see. Yeah, I see like what you mean there, and it's like more of like I thought like maybe at some point I can work at a startup, and I actually was interested in a few places, but for me, I've always wanted to start something on my own. This was something clear, and there were like two routes I could take there. Right? One was maybe I work at a startup, learn the ropes, and then at some point take some time off and do like and work on that, or like I don't know, maybe as a side project I start something and then I leave my job at whatever startup I'm working at, and then dedicate fully myself to that. The issue is that startups, depending, they don't usually pay much, especially like in Spain and stuff. Like you're not going to make a lot of money throughout this process.
Yeah.
The other route, which is the one that I kind of like tried to take, was essentially work in places where you get paid well, try to save as much as I can during this process, and then at some point go all in building my own thing, and that's essentially what I'm doing now.
Nice. Before we go into what do you want to build, what was the, when you were a freelancer, how many projects did you do and which one was the most, um, the one that kind of made you really appreciate the fact of being a freelancer in the first place?
So I worked in like the European Commission. There were like two big projects I was working there. Then Deliveroo was like a huge project while there, and then I have like some smaller ones. I'm finishing one. Like I just finished one with university in Spain. So essentially, I have like a year and a half or almost 2 years of freelancing so far. So essentially, 5 projects I would say.
They just find you on LinkedIn or something and they say, hey, Dylan, like, we think you're the guy for the job. Could you do this in like 2 weeks? You say, no, I need to do it in 3 weeks. Or I can do it in 2 weeks, but you need to pay me XYZ. And you just get the job done.
It depends a lot. Like there's like what it's called like long-term projects, which is essentially they tell you, hey, like we need someone to help us with XYZ, whatever, and it's like a 3 month, 6 month contract. And they you say, hey, this is the rates we're offering. You can like negotiate on the daily rate that you can get. And there were also projects which are like more very specific, like we need to build this thing. Can you do it in how much time? Then I provide like an estimate, and then we say, hey, like for this project in particular, it's going to take this, and we don't really care about like daily rates or whatever. It's just like the deliverable. Work mostly in the first type of projects, which is we get say we need someone to do X, and this is like for this amount of months. And I
Is it
essentially take this.
lonely or are you usually put in a team or?
No, you should put in a team. You're supporting whatever the team is doing, and it changes quite a bit. Like it's completely different from one project or the other, but so far it's been interesting. It's been fun.
Did you ever get into the digital nomad fad? Like, did you think when you're a freelancer, you can, and with your data science skills, you can just jet off somewhere and
That would have been fun. I actually didn't do that much. Like I like traveling, but I like traveling or going on a vacation. But I hate like moving. Like having to move, establish myself in another place. Can like did it for a year because like
you
made
moved to
sense.
Berlin. You're here. You settled.
Yeah, yeah,
Is
yeah.
your wife here too? Or?
No, the thing is, my wife, she's a physician and she's doing her residency there.
In
She's
Spain.
in Spain, so that's why I actually, and this is something that I always talk with all the co-founders. Like, I'm in for a remote first or remote friendly company. I'm going back to Madrid.
Oh yes, incorporated in Madrid.
Yeah, or incorporating Madrid could be also an option. Although I think like for tax related stuff, I think probably Germany is better.
Really?
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know that well. The tax code in Spain, have limited experience in Germany, but it seems like Germany has like a pretty high tax rate. And but anyway, so after a year and a half of doing freelancing, you've also, I think you just need to also build a certain level of not only financial security but also confidence. Now, are you feeling like now, like, okay, you've proven something, this is the time to spread the wings, kind of, and see what happens?
I think so. I think like you can gain that confidence as well. Like maybe if you go, I could have gone all in maybe sometime earlier, but yeah, you have also to gain some confidence on like, okay, I know more or less what I'm doing, and I can, like I think I can do it within a reasonable amount of time. Sometimes in the past I wasn't that sure. I was kind of like thinking like, okay, I don't know if I'm going to be able to deliver on what I'm thinking in a reasonable amount of time. So I thought like now is a time where I feel confident on working on like very uncertain environments. I know how to translate like business problems into software solution, and I also have the money to sustain myself if things take a long time.
Yeah, I also wanted to ask you, like, you mentioned you know how to go into any company and make sense out of, and basically make a business out of the data, uh, or increase the business. How the fuck, like, why isn't everyone literate? It kind of seems like everyone should be literate in data, right? Like, it's so odd that we're gonna call in Dylan, and we have terabytes of data, and he's gonna help us make sense out of it, and hopefully steer our company into some level of success. Seems
Yeah.
so odd.
Yeah. So what I mean is essentially that I am a data scientist that tends to be very focused on like, or try to focus a lot on like, what's the value that we are delivering for whatever we're doing, right? Because I think many data scientists like the technical parts of the job,
Mm,
but don't really like to be involved like on
the
how's the
business.
business using whatever. Like we have this model, so why is the business using this model, and like why is this the best thing we can do to solve this problem? Because there's times where you don't need a model, and as a data scientist you have this bias and say like, hey, let's build a model because like model is cool, whatever, and I want to do it.
Mm.
But there's times where you don't really need a model or like a complex model to solve issues. And what I try to do is take a very pragmatic approach to whatever problem I'm solving. Like I see the problem and say, hey, okay, this is the current solution that we have. Is there any way to improve that, like by simplifying the solution first, by simplifying whatever we have? If not, like what's the best approach that we can take towards that? And for so far, for me, it seems like it has worked well because I do feel that on that front, I have like an advantage over many data scientists.
So how do you want to use that in building your own company? What are the ideas? What's the vision? What do you want to do?
So figuring that out now, I have this idea maybe on Figma for business intelligence. I've been thinking a lot around like, this thing that you mentioned, everyone should be data literate, right?
Yeah.
There should be a data, like everyone should know how to use data, but I found that in many businesses, eh, people struggle still to understand how to use data, how to access data, and they use these tools like Looker, Tableau, and Power BI. But in many times, you will see this weird like internal fights where like I need some data scientist or data analyst to help me like figure out how to use this thing because I need this specific insight. And I think
Yeah.
that should that's going to end at some point. People are getting better at understanding data. Like people are like one of the skills that in the future is going to be needed for sure is like it's the same as you're using computers nowadays, right? Everyone assumes that you know how to use a computer,
Yeah.
and in the future, everyone is going to assume that you know how to use data, interpret data, or like make sense of data.
How do we get there?
I think you need better tooling in particular, and also you need a maybe less or more no code tools. My idea is thinking like around like can can I say, for instance, I'm the CEO of a company and I want to see like where were the sales during our last 3 months or like something like that. Can I say that directly to whatever engine, and that gives me that back without like having to go through any tool or like through any like UI and clicking here there,
Mm.
and without even having to ask any like data analyst or business intelligence analyst. Can I just like simply write where were the like just a question, send that to the database somehow.
Without you having
You
using
get
to
back.
use SQL or anything, you just kind of type in as if you would Google it and it'll spit it out for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why do you think people are so lazy about this? Because it's not that hard. Like, you learned all of this stuff when you were in your mid or late 20s, and now an expert in it. Like, and it does add value and could help you increase your performance as an employee or whatnot. Why is this so deprioritized? Because is it just a question of laziness? And like, if I have that BI person, it's easier to Slack them or send an email and they'll do it for me. Or
I think, yeah, I mean, like you nowadays, it's still like you need some technical ability to do these kind of things. You need either to write SQL on your own, or you need like to understand how these tools work, which don't tend to be necessarily very intuitive. And I think in the future it's going to be just like you have this Slack, whatever bot or interface or whatever interface is just like you ask this interface and you get like the results back. It's essentially like
no one has built this yet.
I don't think so, or at least on I
It
haven't
sounds
seen
like a really powerful idea though. Like if you could get this out there. Mm.
Power BI is doing something along those lines. I know they have like now a way to investigate data with using natural language. I do think there's some complexity, of course, to it because like
Yeah.
sources tend to be messy, and there's a bunch of problems with integrations that you need to solve. But I think it's going to get there eventually.
Okay, so you know what you want to do. You have a pretty clear idea about where you want to be and what kind of company you want to build also on the culture side. What's like the biggest question mark?
Uh, Maybe it is, yeah, like maybe I need to think through some of the things because like I'm not. I don't think this is like a non-obvious idea, and this is something that I always get from EF. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not saying something like that's wildly crazy.
Duh. Yeah.
So what I'm wondering is like, why hasn't this been built? Yeah, maybe it's like because like,
Probably it's like fucking hard to do. How?
yeah, maybe it's that. Maybe it's just that. But I think like,
Maybe all the data scientists have like a conspiracy where they because like once that's done, like why would I hire someone like you to help me interpret the data if I can just Google it? Kind of right.
yeah,
What's your advice after having seen and do you still want to go back to Venezuela at some point?
I don't want to go back to Venezuela, but I want to help improve the situation there. My goal is like reach financial freedom, and then maybe try to figure out the best way that I can help there.
Got it. It's like, sorry, I know I switched questions in between, but
That's fine.
what's your advice kind of for yourself or for people for your younger self or future self or just people who are out there trying to do whatever you're doing?
So I think in general, one thing I've learned over time is like it's going to sound cheesy and like very cringe, but it's like follow your heart. It's kind of like you gotta really believe in what you do because one thing I've noticed is like over time like you make a bunch of mistakes
Yeah.
and like essentially it's a certainty that you're going to make mistakes, and I'd rather make mistakes doing what I thought was right than doing what others thought was right. I've learned that over time it's better like to trust in whatever your hunches, your beliefs, and try to work on like execute on that than get like some advice for someone else. Like, and this is maybe counterintuitive now, like giving you advice
Yeah.
around this, but it's essentially that. Like I really like I've come to believe a lot in my hunches and what I do, and kind of like like don't try to rationalize things a lot and say if I'm feeling this is the way I'm gonna do it.
Got it. So what does your heart tell you now?
Eh, I don't know. No, like I think like EF was the right choice. That one is for sure. I think I still need to figure out okay who's going to be like the right co-founder. I think everyone is like doing the same thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so far is that.
Yeah, we're gonna talk more, I guess, later.
Essentially.
Yeah. Well, thanks a lot, man. That's really cool. Listening to your story and all the lessons. Yeah. Follow your heart.
Thanks a lot, man.